We're back with more NBA coverage, and in this one we have the finale to the regular season for the 2025-26 year. And I'm going to be covering the games that I watched, as well as just getting into an overall outlook on how things transpired yesterday and how things are set up for the play-in and potential playoffs for some of these teams. But to get straight into it, starting out with the Magic and the Celtics that I watched on ESPN for the first of their doubleheaders yesterday. And coming into this game, the Celtics were solidified. You already understood that, despite the just barrage of narratives centering around how this was going to be a lost year and how they were going to struggle without Jason Tatum. Well, they proceeded to get all the way to the second seed and confirm their place in this upcoming playoff sequence. Without question. They'd been on the money all year long, and coming into this game again, you had Jaylen Brown out. You were just thinking really about conserving your players for that series that could be incoming, right? And they started out the game in the exact way to supplement that concept. Where were you when Max Shulga, Jordan Walsh, Ron Harper Jr., Luka Garza, and Baylor Scheierman all took the court and started for Boston in this game? And it was what I expected. You know, I came on here in the video yesterday and I said as much. It's like, hey, you don't have much to lose at this point. You have a stronghold at that second seed. You can just afford to sit some of your guys out and let these young guys get an opportunity to shine, just do whatever. If you win the game, cool. If you lose the game, it is what it is. That doesn't affect your seeding in any capacity. And you know that, again, once all of your main guys get ramped back up to good health and good speed, there aren't many teams that can really go toe-to-toe with them in a series, given their blend of experience and just talent overall amongst their entire roster. So the Celtics were kind of chilling, seemingly, you would think, in this game. As for the Magic, they were the team fighting for play-in playoff positioning. If they would have won, they actually had an opportunity to slide up to the 6th spot in the event that the Hawks, who were facing off against the Heat, ended up losing their particular matchup, or in the event that the Raptors, which was more important, if they proceeded to somehow lose to the Nets, then they would have ended up having to deal with a demotion of sorts. And if the Magic were to lose, they could find themselves as low as 8, having to deal with whoever is the 7th seed after the action yesterday. So they had to come in here and take themselves seriously. And I mean, from the opening tip, they played their core players for the most part. For the most part, their starting caliber guys were out there getting burned, trying their best seemingly to win this game and put themselves in playoff positioning without even having to worry about the potential of playing extra games. And now you have the stage set. So, the Celtics, in a game where you thought they would just be taking it easy, a guy like Ron Harper Jr. had other plans. I mean, this man was jackknifing to the rim at will, seemingly, and just putting together a few good possessions in a row. They could not stop him from getting his buckets. It's interesting considering that, again, the man was literally a few weeks ago a two-way player, recently getting signed to a standard contract in the NBA. And now he's out here on what was apparently his birthday, already having himself a prime start to the game. And the Magic early on, they had a little bit of work to do. Crazy enough. You have to give a coach like Mazzulla a ton of credit when you hear about some of the stuff that transpired in this game. Because again, mind you, some of these guys are second stringers, third string guys who were literally in the G League, coming out there and playing with that kind of fire against a Magic roster that fielded each and every single one of their core contributors for a substantial amount of time in this game, except for Desmond Bane, apparently, because for whatever reason they decided that, hey, our best three-point shooter, you know what we're going to do? We're going to just let him sit out for most of the rest of this game. And he had actually recently, before that, bullied Max Shulga in the paint for an easy layup at this point to give the Magic a little bit of momentum back. As, you know, the pacing was a bit slow, right? You have the Celtics players who, again, traditionally, as a unit, all five of those guys do not consistently play with each other at one point of time. So they had to kind of work it out a little bit, earn the right to start playing a bit more fluid, because you're trying to learn everybody's different cues and tendencies. You're not going to have an understanding of that within the first few minutes of the game. And again, the fact that they were still in a tie ball game up to this point is impressive in and of itself. The Magic, as well, they were sticking with it, but they could not shoot their three balls. Tell me where you've heard that before. It is literally like every single time they just go on these stretches where they will get the most open looks from three. Like, I shit you not. Like, there was a great setup early in this first quarter. You get a pocket pass over to a wide open Jalen Suggs. Everybody on the Celtics defense is at least a few steps away from even coming close to contesting the shot. There's nobody within like 12 feet of him. He's got the entire corner to himself. So they're damn near daring him to shoot. And you know what? He still misses. And this would just be a recurring theme that would flare up over and over and over again in this game. Seemingly, Ron Harper Jr. himself, in what would be a 12-point first quarter, had the answers, had the goods at damn near every turn to tie the ball game up for the Celtics 18-all with around 3 minutes and 48 seconds left. And then the Magic started to understand that, okay, they're throwing this team out there against us. We should be able to take far greater advantage of that matchup. And they started to do so. You had Jalen Suggs actually convert on a few opportunities before Anthony Black, who, again, they pointed out during the broadcast, he could be a candidate for most improved player. I just don't know where exactly he'd finish in terms of the race. He's probably not listed as a favorite, but the jump that he's had from last year, you know, barely getting any rotational minutes, not necessarily being trusted to lead or facilitate an offensive unit, and now he's just burst into this caliber of slasher and dynamic point guard for them, while doubling, damn near tripling his production in some ways. It's honestly an impressive season to have. And you keep that work going as the Magic, would go on an 11-0 run, essentially to end out the first quarter, as they would hold a 9-point lead. So far, seemingly so good for them. And even better when you consider in the second quarter, this is despite, again, every single, it was a little bit crazy. The kinds of players getting out here and just contributing without fail for this Celtics team. You had John Tanji, a player who was literally drafted from Wisconsin. Went undrafted from Wisconsin last draft. He's on this Celtics team, and he's out here just splashing threes like it's nothing himself. Now, the Celtics did have some lapses. There were moments where you have to question what the hell Ron Harper Jr. was doing when it came to handling the ball. And Harper Sr., his father, of course, would definitely not like some of the stuff that he saw in this game. But overall, he held it down. And when he was on the court, man, there was a mostly positive impact that he had in terms of the imprint he left on this game. The Celtics lulled themselves deeper into sleep a little bit. And again, you had even more players step in, like John Tonji, like Delano Banton, who recently got picked up by this team because, yes, he absolutely did. This was just a game that would truly test your knowledge of basketball players currently in the NBA. If you did not know who any of them were before this game, you were certainly having yourself a rough time if you're in that kind of party. But again, just back and forth. Somehow Luka Garza was able to, and again, they highlighted he's a good offensive rebounder. Okay. But he would string together some great post work against the likes of Carter Jr. somehow. And, Carter Jr. is not a bad defender by any means. I guess somehow Garza was really able to just summon some quality offense. Maybe it's not that surprising considering what he was doing at Iowa for those years, but it's just like, again, these little things that you have these Celtics players doing, and the Magic, for a while they're hanging on to the lead, they still have a 7-point lead as they get Franz Wagner back in. And even he, up to this point, although the shooting for this team had been inconsistent, he was actually one of their better players in the game early on. He just had a string of possessions in a row. They decided to keep on giving him space from the three, not putting a hand up. And his ability to just work all over the floor made them pay for that exactly. He was just unfazed as a shooter. And the Magic, again, for a team that is inconsistent in doing so, they needed that. They'd been missing that from Franz Wagner for a majority of the season. And when he was in this game, it felt like they were just in the zone. The only thing about that is that at some point in the second quarter, Franz Wagner, although he had been playing exceptionally well, it seemed and appeared as if he had re-aggravated one of his hamstring strains. Now, of course, that was the injury that kept him out for a great portion of this year. And they prefaced in this same game via the broadcast that he recently dealt with this in the previous game the Magic had. He did eventually return to it. But man, they would want to monitor that very closely. And so that's what ended up happening. He just goes out of the game, and it definitely puts Orlando behind the 8 ball a little bit. You want to have your best players out there in a situation like this. And with him being on that sort of a roll that soon, you wanted to exercise as much of that as possible and ensure that you held a quality lead in this game moving forward. And, it got a little tougher for the Magic eventually to hang on here. Now, it didn't hurt them initially. They were still able to, through just sheer bully ball. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even though, the Celtics do have some pretty good defenders, Luka Garza isn't necessarily one of them. And in other cases, positionally, yes, they're good defenders. But compared to the Magic, a guy like Jordan Walsh is going to be much smaller than Paolo Banchero is. And Banchero especially, they'd mentioned how his approach after the All-Star break had been different in terms of trying to get downhill. It makes sense for him. I even noted it in this game, right? This was his strength at Duke. The entire gripe with him was that you wanted him to improve the jump shooting. You wanted him to kind of lean into that at Duke, as soon as he came into the NBA, you kept on hearing that as a discredit and a demerit on his reputation as a player. Of course, you still want him to carve out that element of his game and refine it. But at the same time, he is at his best when he can just drive downhill, bring his shoulder down, and drive it into another player's body to create physical contact and space for high percentage looks at the rim. That's where he operates the best. And he settled into that a little bit. It allowed them to increase their lead as this went on, and that ability to establish his own presence in the paint opened up a few good looks from the outside, including from Jalen Suggs, who would have, I believe, a 9-point second quarter, and Banchero eventually would cap it off, giving himself and this Magic team a 9-point lead at halftime. Now again, the worst was yet to happen, but so far, the Magic seemingly had been in the driver's seat. And maybe they were a little more content with this being the halftime result. But don't worry, because this third quarter would wake them up, in theory, and show to them why it is important to take each and every single opponent you face off against seriously. Again, mind you, no disrespect to any of these Celtics players. Again, some of these guys are second stringers, third string players, some G League guys, some two-way players. And they proceeded to put a can of whoop ass on this Orlando team in the third quarter. And it was every motherfucking body. Every motherfucking body, man. Yeah, there was a little bit of back and forth from the Magic as they seemingly had control. They were still trying to establish their bully ball, and it had been working. But after this pretty much 9 minute 25 second mark, when Baylor Scheierman makes the first of what was just a fucking wave of deep threes, logo threes, off-balance shots, that was strike one. And this is what started off the entire run for this Boston team. Mind you, at this point, this is a 65-56 ball game. And Scheierman, again, just literally, it had been crazy for him, man. Like, we knew what he was doing at Creighton as a shooter. The man could not be touched from the perimeter. He was legit for the Blue Jays for his time there. The hometown kid, hailing from Nebraska, doing that at that college for a full 4 years, and getting himself recognized as a pretty elite shooter in the NCAA. Gets drafted by the Celtics, and again, it had been a struggle for him for a while. Like, he, at times earlier in the season, he'd be out there, and it's just like, okay, what are these shots we're taking? Then they preface as well during this game that, hey, after the All-Star break, he'd been garnering a much better footing with this team, shooting 40% from the three post-All-Star break, and really ushering himself into the rotation a lot more than he once was. In this game was the culmination of all of it. Now again, 65-56 ball game. You had Baylor Scheierman continue to do it. It was almost like, in a way, he was playing point forward. They were just setting some great screens to get him in a lane where he could either shoot it or he could create enough of a dribble penetration to force a different collapse and force other defenders to come over, leaving shooters wide open. And the Celtics were just rolling. They were fucking on the money. again, his stance when he shoots the ball, it's kind of funky. It's, in a way, him trying to be off balance a bit, like you'd see from those shooters that just space out and move all over the court before jacking up shots. He had the ball in his hands, and he's just swinging his body ever so slightly to line up with the rim. It almost looks in a way like he's fading back. And again, the man is, last time I checked, because he was listed as a forward guard, coming out, he was at least like 6'8", 6'9" as a player. Okay, he's 6'6". Still, one of the taller of players of this archetype. But it didn't matter, because you can get over most contests with that kind of frame. And man, he was. Like, you had Wendell Carter Jr. trying to guard one of these fucking shots, bro, and he just splashed it right in his face from deep, dude. And the Celtics fans, you know, I don't know how much they were expecting once they saw that was the starting lineup out there, but you could feel the energy oozing out of that arena from the television screen. All of them were on their feet. All of them were cheering this team on, and it did not stop. It was Ron Harper Jr. getting in for a free dunk. It was the hustle of this Celtics team with Luka Garza getting himself another putback layup. And then Baylor Scheierman just kept on trying to drive the dagger in. Garza kept on making it happen. And before you knew it, even John Tonji was getting in the action with a fucking reverse layup. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard me explain a good portion of what was a 24-6 run by this Celtics team, not having most of their core players playing this game. Like I said, Jaylen Brown, he's sitting out for rest. They decided to let Jason Tatum rest, which, again, they had all reins to do so. Even the Myers Keita, a starting center for them who had done exceptionally well, and again, in a different year, could also be a most improved player candidate in his own right. He was also injured, so he did not appear in this game. Littered was that lineup with, again, guys in Ron Harper Jr. who had just been on two-way deals. Guys in Max Scholga who hadn't even really played all that much. Scheierman, you know, the improvement was there, and he'd just been starting to find that opportunity a little bit. And that Celtics team, filled with those guys, proceeded to do that to Orlando in just a third quarter, put up 42 points on them, held them to 20, and had a 13-point lead after the third quarter, in which Baylor Scheierman also had 12 third-quarter points by himself. Just think about that for a second. Every Orlando fan in that moment was in panic mode. Because it's like, you're watching this. You think this is a free game the second you see that starting lineup. And, call it overconfidence, call it a bit of underestimation, but they were 15 minutes away from actually losing their placement in a potential playoff setting, purely, without having to go through the play-in. That was in jeopardy right now, and it was going to take something for this team to work off of that momentum. That is a tough act to follow up, but if you wanted to save your playoff lives, you needed some kind of energy, and you needed it fucking fast to slow all that momentum down and quiet TD Garden a little bit. You just had to. There was no other way around it. So, the fourth quarter, well, a bit of a slow burn would unfold here. Because while the Celtics had played exceptionally well, especially after such a hot stretch in the third quarter. The one thing that you could hold against a team like that is that, hey, if this team does start to make mistakes, if they don't remain as efficient as they were with their possessions, the Magic could work themselves back into the game through their defense. And again, after a 42-point third quarter, after allowing all of these different players to just go fucking ballistic on them, as I've been saying in previous games, it feels like this Magic team in ways has lost some of that defensive identity. And considering under Jamal Mosley, that's how they want to operate as a team, now would be the time, more than ever, to harness that mentality once again. There was no other choice. Now, I guess they decided as well, with all that in mind, to put back in Desmond Bane finally. Who would have thought that having him play would be a pretty important thing for this team to do? Beats me, right? The Celtics did have a lead as large as 16 in this game. And again, it took the Magic a lot of second chance opportunities to put together points, but that was no problem for them. You snatch away all that extra time for the Celtics to start, bolstering their own offensive load here. And again, it takes possessions away. It takes them out of rhythm a little bit. And it gives you the free range to, again, dominate and control the pace of the game. Needed to recapture that after such a large stretch. So slowly but surely, they started to grind it out. And they bunkered down on defense. Credit to Anthony Black as well for getting most of that in particular started. I mean, there were a couple plays here, including one in this fourth quarter where, you just have a complete and total scramble for the ball unfolding. And he's still, in that context, finds a way back to it, muscles in to the lane, and gets himself an easy layup. Don't overcomplicate it in that moment. If they're going to hand you the ball, you have to be prepared, and it seemed like Anthony Black was. That generated a lot of the other action here. And with that overall energy, again, if Jalen Suggs wasn't going to do it the whole time, you could have Anthony Black out there taking some of the load off. And it worked perfectly. They went on a 14-3 run. And before you knew it, we were in clutch time. This was a 5-point ball game, and the Celtics were forced to call a timeout. With them also having an opportunity to decrease the lead even further after forcing a different turnover on Jordan Walsh. If only Desmond Bane would have made the layup. But after all of that, it just became the Luka Garza show for some reason, as he would get himself a couple of layups, once again just doing damage in the post, getting back to the basket and using the leverage against Carter Jr. mainly, which again, it's just like, he's a solid defender. I don't know how he's susceptible to all of this, but hey, like, that is just wild stuff. That still didn't really faze the Magic all that much. I mean, you actually had them tie up this ball game. For a team that struggles to shoot, they got big-time shots from Desmond Bane and a little in and out into a step back from Jalen Suggs with John Tonji attempting to guard him. Before you knew it, you had 36 seconds left in this ball game, and this was tied at 108 all. So this Magic team, despite the number of things that can be said, they did try their absolute hardest to come back and make this a game for themselves. And they had the momentum in their corner. They had themselves an opportunity with under a minute in this regulation period to take control of this game and ultimately place themselves firmly in the playoffs without any room for panic or trouble. Just a few short seconds away from seemingly getting the hard part out of the way in this entire equation. All they had to do was play defense. And to their credit, they did. Because they dished this pass over to Luka Garza, right? He's just in a bind in what to do with the ball in his hands. Carter Jr.'s playing good defense on him, not allowing him to really back him down in the post. He's guarding him very tightly. Now, at this point, you could still pass the ball out. But when you're having a night like he did, why bother? Because this 7-foot-tall motherfucker proceeds to, off-platform, with both feet behind the three-point line, take the shot right up against Wendell Carter Jr.'s contest. Early as shit in the shot clock. And he hit that shit. Was wet like fucking water. Just like that, the Celtics snatched back the lead instantly. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that Luka Garza, of all people, is able to hit a shot in clutch time like that. And again, it's crazy that this Celtics team quite literally snatched victory away from the jaws of defeat against all the odds. There aren't many people who would have believed that something like this would go down in a game without any of their core contributors. And here they are, with a chance to now send the Magic out in style, as if they hadn't already had the total outpacing of this team in the third quarter. That was a dagger in every sense of the word. And now the pressure was back on the Magic, which, although they tried their hardest, Jalen Suggs did not have the same luck on the ensuing three-point attempt, and thus the Celtics, no Tatum, no Brown, no Kata, no White, no Vucevic. You can go up and down the roster. And they won 113 to 108. This is about the Celtics winning this game. And while they are set as a playoff team, again, like I echo, this tells you everything you need to know about the impact that Joe Mazzulla has on this team as a coach. So what when it comes to, some of the responses that he may have to some of these questions, or his relationship with media members, or how he talks about certain topics around the league? You can say anything you want to about that, but the man knows how to get the most out of his players. Because when I see a guy like Baylor Scheierman, and again, they were talking about it throughout this game, that, hey, his ascent has been, viewed by Mazzulla this season, and Mazzulla had spoken on it. He's not a pushover on defense either, he said. We know he can shoot the lights out. Everybody knows that. When you see this man get multiple chase down attempts in the fourth quarter of this game alone, first around the halfway mark. As he misses a three, they get Wendell Carter Jr. out in transition, and he gives him a clean, hard foul, hustling back to the fucking play. Then Baylor Scheierman again. Now we're in clutch time, and Franz Wagner has an opportunity to put points on the board after Delano Banton lost the ball here. Now, credit to Banton as well. And again, this team effort of hustle, you have to respect that shit, regardless of where you stand on this. Because Banton, for all intents and purposes, it was a bad turnover. But he's still with Wagner the whole way, and he actually does a good job of holding Wagner off enough to where he can't handle the ball as effectively. And even as he's near the rim, it forces Wagner back inside for Baylor Scheierman to come out of the fucking rafters and block him after chasing him down damn near the full length of the fucking court. You can't teach that. You can't quantify just how important something like that is, especially as we're nearing playoff time. Even if Scheierman, again, he's played himself in the rotation, it's not necessarily a guarantee that he or these other players will consistently get reps in the playoffs. But everybody out there, regardless of what the numbers say, even the short, amount of time that the Englishman Amari Williams had in this game, undermanned with just 8 players out there on the court, and they still fought like hell to win this damn game. And again, this is a team littered with backups and other role players. Not any of the core contributors that I mentioned. And they won, and they smoked them at times in the process. And they, for the icing on the cake, had themselves a historic output. Because I mentioned Baylor Scheierman, I mentioned Luka Garza, and I mentioned Ron Harper Jr., the birthday kid, interchangeably throughout this particular game. Well, it was worth it. This was the first time in Celtics history that 3 different players logged a career high in points scored. Baylor Scheierman in this game had 30 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists on 8 of 20 shooting with 6 threes. Luka Garza had 27 points and 12 rebounds, along with a double-double in that same stretch on 10 of 18 shooting with 3 threes. And Ron Harper Jr. also had 27 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals on 10 of 20 shooting with 5 threes. John Tonji also had 13 points off the bench. But those 3 in the same game on what was seemingly set to be just your average random 80-second game of the regular season for this Celtics team. No, they gave these motherfuckers life throughout the entire game. And you felt it with every single rep they were taking out there. They played, each and every single one of them, more than 37 minutes. Each of them. And again, I'm sure that they had a positive impact overall on the output, regardless of how this game ended up going, regardless of some of the miscues that they had in the fourth quarter. If they can, as a second unit, third unit, go up against this Magic team and do this, that just makes the Celtics even deeper as a team moving forward. And again, the fact that team chemistry was going to be derailed when Jason Tatum came back. I think this game and this kind of result shows more than anything else that no, not necessarily. Because yes, while Jason Tatum is going to be the priority, for this team moving forward. While he is going to be the player that takes him over the edge in the event that they do go on a championship caliber run in campaign. There is nothing more valuable at this stage of the NBA season for any player in any setting to be ready when your moment is called. Let me repeat that. There is nothing more valuable for any player in any setting on any one of these teams than to be ready when your moment is called. I don't care if you're a backup. I don't care if you're logging 5 minutes per game in the regular season. I don't care if you have low averages throughout the year. If we somehow lost trust in you throughout the regular season. If you're going to ensure that in the playoffs, you rise along with everybody else, there is almost nothing that an opposing team can do to stop that. When you're in your zone, nothing you can do about it. And that's what this Celtics team clearly wants to live by. And they just showed you on national television that this is what can be done. So you have to give them all the respect here. As for the Magic, again, you're viewing this from their standpoint. This was an absolute give-me game. And you proceeded to let this team walk all over you. You know, for a team that wants to live by a defensive identity, they came in this game and they out-hustled you. Think about that. They outpaced you in the third quarter. They're naturally going to outshoot you. And again, the fact that we are still in game 82 and you have not truly learned how to stop settling for some of these shots is just ridiculous. Yes, you want to create them and get over that notion. The reality for this team is that outside of Desmond Bane and occasionally Franz Wagner, they can't shoot. And they keep trying to compensate for it in other ways. But the Celtics team, again, just like they did last year, exposed them for it. And again, these aren't even the starting caliber players doing it. And they exposed you again. Think about what kind of message that sent. And this has just been an all season long thing for the Magic. Now again, some of the injuries here can't be controlled. Desmond Bane actually played all 82 games this season and became the first player since 2009 Dwight Howard for the Magic to do so. Everybody else was just all over the place. You had some injuries take place. You got some DNPs logged by some of these players. So there was just a general amount of inconsistency here. And you know what? When we go into the play-in position, when we go into the playoff position, what's that going to look like? You've been inconsistent the whole year, and you haven't really shown us true signs of being able to reverse that now. So how exactly is that going to be trusted moving forward? Like, you seriously have to ask yourself that hard-hitting question. Because at this point, man, Banchero, yes, he can drive downhill all he wants to. What's going to happen when a team like the Celtics, just as good defensively, who are just as good defensively, force him outside of the restricted area? What are you going to do? You're going to see him again, like he did in games in that whole series, settle for jump shots that he doesn't necessarily want to take, that teams would be more than comfortable with him and the team taking, and then you just lose all control of the game. Like, it's not all about the shooting as well. Because seriously, like, I question that. Where the hell is the fire for the team? Where the hell is it at? It showed up. It showed up just in the nick of time for them to make this a game. What the hell took you so long? And why did it take Anthony Black, of all players, to give them the spark that they needed? You don't have a problem with that. And you love to see it from a player in Anthony Black's position. But from the opening tip, everybody should be prepared and ready to fucking work. And I could not definitively say that. Again, if Franz Wagner got himself a little injured, you can understand that. But what is Mosley's decision to leave Bane out for a majority of this game? What exactly was that? He only played 18 minutes. Why? If he's your best shooting asset, didn't you think that against a team in the Celtics that will try to demolish you from the three-point line themselves, didn't you think you'd want to at least match up with that in some way properly for the entire game and not let up? And you just do exactly that. I don't get it. I don't. And again, you can't control a shot like that going in from Luka Garza. But what you can control is your execution on your own side of the floor. And it seems like no matter what, we are having the same conversation over and over again, because repeatedly the Magic can't well enough, efficiently enough to last in a game. Repeatedly, dude. I mean, bro, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. And again, you know, any number of things can happen for Orlando, but this was literally the game. This was the game. I'd have to question if Jamal Mosley even alerted them of that heading into this. This was the game that you needed right here. And not only do you now, as a result of losing it, not get yourself immediately into the playoffs, you now have to work through the play-in and get yourself an extra game of play-in, which might help and could also hurt. There's a bit of a balance to that. I don't know if this Magic team would think this is a good thing. Like, if you're trying to rebuild that chemistry, yes, but at the same time, that would be your 83rd game of the regular season. And you do not have that on your roster right now. It's a major fire alarm. So they have got their absolute work cut out for them. Jalen Suggs had 23 points and 6 rebounds in this game on 8 of 17 shooting. 7 threes for him is great. And then everybody else is just a combined 5 for 28. Everybody else. Paolo Banchero shot 7 of 22 in this game. Let that sink in. Again, he could get his way into the paint a few times. But if he wasn't getting those shots at the rim, if he wasn't forcing the contact, you could just leave him out in the mid-range. He won't make it. You can leave him on the perimeter. He won't make it. What you think a defense like this is just going to stray away from that? They're going to ramp that shit up in the playoffs. They're going to ramp that shit up in the play-in. Yes, he had a triple-double, but again, all that and 6 turnovers as well. So it's like, what exactly are we doing? And then Franz Wagner had 20 points. Again, limited minutes. Might have been a little injured. Might have re-aggravated something. They wanted to be careful. I get that. But now it's cost you. Now it's cost you. And so we will see what happens with them. But dude, this when they look back on things, if they don't go according to plan, this is going to be the game. And many others throughout the year. Because again, weren't they like, they were a team themselves who had done fairly well in regards to protecting double-digit leads seemingly. And you let it get out of hand like that, the worst possible moment. Just an absolute embarrassment from their standpoint. There is no way, if you're them in their position, you're thinking that you lose this fucking game. And again, Magic fans, the hardcore fans out there, they're pissed off about this result. They're pissed off about this. Or maybe some of them are just so numb to the pain that this specific Magic team has given them over the past few years that it's like, they're a little bit desensitized to it. They don't even feel much anymore. That's how crazy it has gotten in Orlando. Dang, I had to be fair about it. That's a lot to get through just the one game, almost 52 minutes. But again, it's worth it. You know what I'm saying? It's worth it. It ended up being solid, but man, yeah, there's no way. And also in that regard, to just, I can get into just a little bit more. It was actually broadcaster Mark Jones's final call on ESPN. He had been there in that position for the last 36 years, since 1990. And he had just been a huge piece of that coverage from some of the earliest iterations of NBA Today, apparently, to doing consistent broadcast work, even being able, at a time, to call the NBA Finals. Something that hadn't traditionally happened before. So, again, and they were mentioning it as well, like he came from TSN, he came from Canada doing this, and carved out a long-standing career with ESPN, getting to cover the sport that he loved growing up. That's just amazing stuff. He's leaving on his own terms. He wasn't fired or anything like that. This was just a decision made by him. But man, hey, it's a legendary career in that spot. And, you hope, because again, he's still saying like, hey, he's going to be active in another fashion. And you hope he succeeds in that spot. Whoever is able to step into this next is going to have some very big shoes to fill. I can tell you that right now. So you have to give him all the respect as he moves forward with his career. But now to move into the Nuggets and Spurs game. Yeah, this one was also just like kind of wild. I mean, yes, no Wemby. Jokic played the first half to get to the 65 game requirement. Entering this scenario, the Spurs were set as the number 2 seed, and the Nuggets essentially had to win to secure the 3rd seed. If they had ended up losing and the Lakers were able to beat the Jazz, which more than likely could happen, they would have fallen to 4 and would have had to deal with the 5 seed in the Western Conference. So there were still a few playoff implications here, but all in all, they were going to make it. And again, in a game where seemingly you don't have all of your core contributors out there, oh my gosh, like they were just, oh man, this game, oh my goodness. I mean, the main thing that just jumps out to me literally when talking about this game was one of the first things I said, and this is going to sound incredibly crazy as an observation, Dylan Harper and Julian Strawther are such similar players to each other, like you would not believe. I mean, some of the tendencies that they do line up 1-to-1, and maybe that is just their nature, with them both preferring to be slashers to the rim. But man, they were just going back and forth with each other for a little bit, and I just found that very interesting. Yes, Strawther himself had 14 points to start out in the first quarter as well overall, and the Nuggets had a 9-2 run in this stretch. Another thing as well was, this was just a game for fucking big boy dunks. My goodness. The amount of fucking times, I just need you to understand something, alright? Carter Bryant is athletic as shit. Yes, the notion was that, hey, he could not finish alley-oop dunks earlier in the year. Then you just see this man in a game like this take Jokic up in the post, get him out of position, and fucking go up with 2 hands, avert, and slam dunk it in his face. And yes, I love Jokic. You can't defend this as if he wasn't trying to contest the shot. He tried to reach his arm out and block him. Athleticism is not his forte. Bryant jammed it on his ass. And that was not the only time. It was Dylan Harper getting into the action later in the quarter. It just would not stop. And this is just going to be a recurring theme throughout this recap, I suppose. But nevertheless, man, they went blow for blow with each other. They were not taking this game lightly at all. And you know what? That's what you like to see from the product entering the playoffs. You want that kind of mentality on both ends, no matter who's out there. No matter who exactly you're facing off against, you want to keep that same energy. And I was here for it. It was very fun to watch this game. And you got some other interesting players here making good contributions. Curtis Jones, a rookie from Iowa State for the Nuggets, who had only really played a few minutes sparingly throughout the season, he came in making his first 4 3-pointers for this Nuggets team as well to keep their offense rolling, one that is consistently elite in the Jokic era. And, from there, the Nuggets were hanging on, at least. They had themselves a 3-point lead because Harrison Barnes as well was in position, apparently from something I saw, to get to a point where if he got at least over 10, the Spurs would have been the first team to have 8 players score double figures or average double figures for an entire season. And, actually, yeah, I can go and see if that was true or not at a point by the end of this game. But he was actually getting in some impressive floaters as well. And granted, that's what the Dylan Harper putback dunk actually came off of. He was getting in some weird motions at the rim. He ended up missing one of these floaters. And then Dylan Harper was able to just dunk it home. Then, even with the energy from the Spurs early on, they cooled down. They cooled down a lot. You got another essentially 24-0 run. Probably ends in the score sheet as a 24-6 tally. But yeah, the Nuggets, even without Jokic on the court at this time, in a game where you'd want to take advantage of that, if you are San Antonio, they could not do it. Julian Strawther was keeping his foot on the gas pedal. Curtis Jones was continuing to splash threes. And Jonas Valanciunas, akin to ways in which he had been affecting it earlier on, continued to be solid as a backup center. Now again, they were leaving him open for a couple three-pointers, so maybe he's lost a bit of that touch as a stretch 4 or stretch 5 even. But, he's been productive in that role when Jokic is not on the floor. And again, it had been paying off for them. Like, they did have this rough stretch, the Nuggets, where Jokic was hurt, and even in his early return, they slumped a little, went under 500, like at least 6-9 or something like that in a 15-game time span. But this team, even as they're still trying to get healthy to this point, they didn't have Aaron Gordon play, they didn't have Cam Johnson play, they didn't have Christian Braun play, they didn't have Jamal Murray play in this game. But they were still up to a lead as large as 22 in this game. And we're up 65-43 after Bruce Brown Jr. got in a silky smooth finish at the rim. But don't worry, this Spurs team, because again, how many times do you have to understand the mentality of this team? How many times do they have to show you that they have the energy needed for a playoff setting? Because when you thought that this was just going to be completely over, you have them taking this all the way down on a 16-6 run to close the second quarter, capped off with Curtis Jones hitting a deep three with around 5 seconds left, and then De'Aaron Fox splashing it from deep to beat the buzzer and give the Spurs a 14-point margin to work with, which doesn't sound easy at all, but compared to being down by 22 points, you'd more than take that. The momentum was starting to tip back in San Antonio's favor a little bit, but it would still take them some work to truly get there. You had some quiet nights early from the likes of Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox. And while they tried to work themselves back into it, the reality is that they just weren't as efficient as they needed to be. Now, they got help from a lot of other players. It was Dylan Harper continuing to slash all the way over to the fucking rim, man. It was Keldon Johnson doing damage in the post for some reason and getting quality shots up, using his frame to his advantage, and even drawing contact on a few occasions to just keep the game on ice, keep it within striking distance for the Spurs. Now, they did get within 11 after one of these Keldon Johnson buckets, but that would take a while for them to overcome. Then you got Castle to heat up a little bit. He'd make multiple threes in a row. You got Harrison Barnes to also contribute, and it became an 8-point ball game near the end of the third quarter before they gave Jalen Pickett, Calvin Booth's favorite player in the world, a bogus call. I'll be honest with that. He fakes out the three, tries to draw contact in the corner, and he gets it. I just didn't really know if that was all that compelling of a case for him to, make for himself, but I digress. This fourth quarter, though, man, it just kept going with some of these big boy dunks here. Because if you thought that was over, I get back into the game. All right, and in fact, this might have happened a little bit earlier, but nevertheless, Jonas Valanciunas at a point, dog, he's literally matched up against Mason Plumlee, all right? And this motherfucker He's struggling a little bit with making a move. But instead of, listening to the critics that keep calling him a fucking stretch fob, he decided to get fucking physical with Mason Plumlee. He's bumping him around a little bit, and then he gets the positioning on him to just fucking, again, stand and dunk once more off the vert that Valanciunas might possess. He just fucking takes his single hand and jams it in the rim for a stuff. Fittingly. Like, again, Plumlee was initially starting this game against Jokic, which is just a fucking fever dream. But he definitely showed him up in that moment. And this mentality just kept going. There's even David Ronnie, of all people. Yes, David Ronnie in this game would also pull off a putback dunk. And that is only after a time where, for some reason, just a few plays after seeing what Carter Bryant did to Nikola Jokic, he tried earlier in the game to dunk it on Carter Bryant, and he smacked that shit right out of the fucking stands. But he got his revenge, so I guess it cancels out that specific action, but whatever. Ultimately, although they try to last in this, the Nuggets were able to go on a short 6-0 run that really spaced things out from here on. And while they try to come back and just, string together a flurry of buckets in a row, it did not end up being nearly enough. Like, it got to a point where the Spurs, the game was within 8, and they keep taking 3-pointers, and they can't make any of them. Like, there literally was a lid on the rim. And at a point, it's like, okay, y'all got to stop shooting now. Go for 2. It's still a 3-possession ball game either way. You could just get yourself a more routine look. And no, they didn't settle for that at all. So that was a bit of an anticlimactic sequence in regards to the rest of the game. But the Nuggets would take it 128 to 118, and they would secure the 3rd seed. In this game, the Nuggets would shoot 50% from the field and 36.7% from deep, while also logging 58 rebounds. In this time span, they also logged what would be their 12th straight win, which is tied for the second longest in their franchise history, and by far the longest that they've ever had while Jokic has been a part of the team. They also mentioned as well that David Adelman, along with Rick Adelman, his father, previously became the first father and son duo each to win 50 games in a season. And again, considering where the Nuggets have been at a point, you lose a durable player like Jokic for that much time, and you are still able to hang on all the way through. That's a testament to what Adelman was doing, especially during that time. And those are the opportunities where I think people really got to see, like, hey, this man, David Adelman, is a damn good coach. You don't necessarily have all those star players to rely on and your franchise guy. And so you really have to get into your arsenal of schemes to really make this work and still win ball games. And they were. And they got themselves here where they're now a legitimate playoff team with a chance to make a deep run themselves. But in this game, again, it was wild. Julian Strawther had 25 points and 6 rebounds to lead the team on 9 of 19 shooting with 4 threes. Nikola Jokic still had 23 points and 8 rebounds in just 18 minutes. But again, got the 65 game requirement. And again, considering where the Nuggets have been at a point, you are still able to hang on all the way through. That's a testament to what Adelman was doing, especially during that time. And so you really have to get into your arsenal of schemes to really make this work and still win ball games. And they were. And then Bruce Brown Jr. had 14 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds on 7 of 8 shooting and a start. And Jonas Valanciunas had 16 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists off the bench on 8 of 16 shooting. David Roddy also logged the first double-double in his NBA career with 15 points and 13 rebounds on 6 of 13 shooting, just because. And then Chris Jones off the bench also had 13 points with all 4 threes made. Yeah. As for the Spurs, De'Aaron Fox had 24 points and 6 rebounds with 5 assists. Stephon Castle had 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists. Devin Vassell had 19 points. Carter Bryant had 13 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. And Keldon Johnson had 18 and 6 off the bench. But again, a couple of these players just struggled to shoot. Stephon Castle was 3 of 10 from the field. And De'Aaron Fox was 8 of 21 from the field. Not necessarily the greatest look in terms of, trying to be efficient. But still, they were in the fight all the way. And you know what? Hey, that is all that you can ask for. But let me see about this. No. Okay, so Harrison Barnes, they said essentially he needed around 17 points. He finished with just 12, and as I'm seeing here, he ended with 9.9 points per game on the season. Just missing out on that. But again, the roster still goes deep, man. You had Champagnie, Harper, Johnson, Vassell, Castle, Fox, and Wembanyama all reached double-digit scoring. Wembanyama might be looked at as the anchor, and rightfully so, especially on the defensive end. But this team still has so many weapons all over the place. The fact that all of Harper, Castle, and Fox can find their own roles in this offense at any one point in time. That many guards being able to make that kind of an impact in just a single season's worth of work. How many different ways do you think that they can beat you? But we're going to keep bringing up their lack of playoff experience. De'Aaron Fox made the playoffs before. Harrison Barnes is a fucking NBA Finals champion. They have guys in there who can get them on that specific wavelength heading into the playoffs. And they'd already been playing as one of the more physical teams in the NBA. It's not a secret that they were referencing that I think it was Fox talking in February about them needing to ramp up their physicality. It's no secret that they have literally been the best team by record, by points per game, by assists per game, and with Wembanyama again going on that tear of blocks since February as a result of that. And you again saw more of that in this game, despite the result. So the Spurs, again, even with the loss, they're far and above locked in as a 2 seed. I mean, it's not even a debate at that point. Not at all. So, with that being said, those would be the 2 games that I watched in particular, because they were live. I'll briefly talk about some of the other games. The Clippers would beat the Warriors yesterday 115-110, as they will more than likely now, with everything else happening, play against each other again in the play-in on Wednesday. The Jazz would lose to the Lakers 131-107. Even with the Lakers winning again, the Nuggets also won, so the Lakers are staying put at 4, and they will face off against the Rockets in the playoffs. Oscar Tshiebwe for the Jazz had 29 points and 17 rebounds. And I'm just going to call it out, too. Like, there have been some very interesting performances from some of these players on these teams. You have to appreciate the April randomness that comes with some of these particular, efforts by these players. Truly, you have to love it. But yeah, just a dominant win for the Lakers. There wasn't anything crazy I was expecting from that, to be honest with you. The Rockets would beat the Grizzlies 132 to 101, I should say. Dariq Whitehead had 26 points and a single assist with 4 rebounds. Jameer Mashack also had 11 points and 11 assists after a game in which he actually had a triple-double. Yes. And for the Rockets, again, pretty standard stuff. They sat some of the main contributors to this team, which makes sense. Although Clint Capella hit a 3 and had 23 points and 13 rebounds, so that's fun. The 76ers beat the Bucks 126 to 106. And in this game, you had Cormac Ryan, a guy who came in and has just been a spark plug for the Bucks alongside AJ Green, just because he had 22 points and 10 rebounds in this game while taking 20 shots. I don't know if you want him doing that, but okay, it happened. And what exactly are you going to do about it now? The Raptors beat the hell out of the Nets 136 to 101, confirming their placement in the playoffs as the 5 seed outright. That still didn't stop Tyson Etienne from having 20 points off the bench for Brooklyn. It also did not stop Chaney Johnson, who I've absolutely not heard of before, putting up a 16-point, 13-rebound ball game, also off the bench. Just, man, like, it is crazy. The Hornets actually beat the Knicks 110 to 96. Now, again, the Knicks were sitting out a good amount of people, and Mikal Bridges, came in for just a single minute just to log his consecutive starts streak and continue that. He is an Iron Man in every sense of the word, but the Hornets cannot give a fuck about that. And promptly, they beat the shit out of them. The Heat beat the Hawks 143 to 117. Again, the Hawks didn't really play many of their main contributors, although Buddy Hield got an opportunity to finally step out on the court, and he put up 31 points off the bench on 12 of 18, shooting with 7 threes. The man is still a lethal shooter when he wants to be. He'll have those cold nights, we understand, but man, again, right there with Stephen Curry since he's entered the league in terms of made three-pointers. So, you have to expect that every now and then from him. Asa Newell also had 17 points and 11 rebounds. Yeah. Man, oh man. All right. The Pistons beat the Pacers 133 to 121. For some reason, Paul Reed had 26 points and 6 rebounds. On perfect shooting, by the way. Yeah, who would have had that on their bingo card, right? Seriously, who? Like, there's no way that's real. The Cavs beat the Wizards 130 to 117. Bub Carrington also logged 82 games this season, and so did Brandon Podziemski. They had a whole list of just 18 players to do this. So you have to give respect to them. Jameer Watkins had 24 points, and Sharif Cooper had 20 and 6. Big whoop. Naquan Tomlin for the Cavs had 26 points as well, 1 out of 16, shooting with 4 threes. And Tyrese Proctor, the Dookie, had 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists, along with a steal off the bench on 9 of 16, shooting as well with 4 threes. The Mavericks beat the Bulls 149 to 128. Jeez, man. I mean, my goodness. Lachlan Albrick from Australia had a triple-double. Oh, man. Where were you on April 12th, 2026 when the Bulls' second-round rookie center, in his only start to this point, put up a 10-point, 15-rebound, 10-assist triple-double with a single turnover, and they still lost the game. They still lost the game by 21 points. Rob Dillingham had 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists off the bench on 11 of 18 shooting, and they still lost the fucking game. Because Ryan Nembhard in this motherfucker almost had himself a crazy triple-double stat line. For one of the smaller players on the court, he had himself a 15-point, 9-rebound, and 23-assist ball game with 4 turnovers on 6 of 11 shooting with a 3. Man, that is crazy. I am here for it, dude. You have got to give that man a ton of respect. That is some epic shit right there. I'm not gonna lie. You know, he'd been coming in occasionally for the Mavericks throughout the season, and he'd actually put together some solid games. Of course, between him coming off the bench at times, between Brandon Williams coming off the bench at times, you know, you had to figure out a way to get some kind of spark out there with not having Kyrie Irving. And between the likes of he and Williams, they gave it to him. And it culminated in something like this. I mean, that is just fucking, that's mental. It wasn't, you know, more than a month ago or so when Isaiah Collier himself had a 22 assist ball game. And you still find a way to get over this. It's just wild. The man is a true point guard in every sense of the word. You should have known this the second he came from the Gonzaga system. You should have known this the second the connection with his brother Andrew Nembhard was made to be clear. You should have known. There's no way that any of y'all should be doubting this moving forward. This is what he's capable of. And that just deserves a massive amount of respect. And it wasn't even just him. You also had Musa Zize off the bench in 41 minutes, put together 17 points and 20 rebounds. You had also, is this Tyler Smith? Yes, Tyler Smith, former Buck, putting up 20 points and 7 rebounds. You had A.J. Johnson put up 20 points, another former Buck and Wizard. And then John Polakidis also had 28 points to lead the Mavericks in scoring on 9 of 18, shooting with 8 threes. Like, these stats are just blowing your mind because you would not expect any of these players to do this, but at the same time, you're rolling them out there, especially in a case like the Mavericks. It's a lost season. You're not going to qualify for the playoffs. And, man, they just have the opportunity to go absolutely crazy. Then it gets crazier. Because in the same game, between the Timberwolves and the Pelicans, Minnesota would win 132 to 126. Jeremiah Fears had 36, 10, and 5 on 12 of 28 shooting with no threes. And Derek Queen also had himself a 30 and 22 rebound ball game. Also on 11 of 28 shooting. Say what you want about the lack of efficiency, but they got theirs, and they were given the opportunity to do so. You can't hate on that. You can't really hate on that. Even wilder, Joe Ingles had 15 points and 10 assists just for the fuck of it. Johan Beringer also had 24 points and 13 rebounds with 7 fucking blocks. Count that, 7 on 9 of 12 shooting. What in the absolute fuck? Terrence Shannon Jr. is also a certified bucket getter. Well, he got majority of his makes at the free throw line. 14 of his 26 eventual points came from the stripe. and he shot 6 of 18 from the field. The Trailblazers beat the Kings 122 to 110. Precious Achiuwa just decided, I'm going to put up 27 points and 11 rebounds, just because. On 10 of 21 shooting. That's normal for him, I guess, in a way. But it's a solid win for the Trailblazers as they also get themselves in the 8th seed for the play-in. And then the Suns would get themselves a nice little win over the Thunder. Again, they weren't playing much people. They didn't need to at this point. They're obviously in the outright number 1 seed. But the Suns, maybe just for carrying a little momentum, as they will host the play-in game against the Trailblazers. Another Suns-Trailblazers game for you, man, in a primetime slot. For the third fucking time this season. Literally, nobody would have considered this, but okay. Jamari Boye had 27 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds on total of 23 shooting. Rasheer Fleming had 16. Amir Coffey had 17. Ryan Dunn had 20, 11, and 5 on 8 of 11 shooting and actually made a couple threes. Rare to see that for him. And then it just continues to get better, because in some of the first real minutes that Kayman Malach, the center drafted from Duke by the Suns earlier last year, obviously in the draft, he put up 18 points and 14 rebounds on 8 of 15 shooting and actually made a couple of threes himself. Kobe Brea, the shooter that they got from Duke, also put up 20 points in 29 minutes and shot 7 of 11 from the field while making 6 of his three-pointers. Nikola Topic, on the other hand, had 18 points and 14 assists on 8 of 16 shooting. Brandon Carlson had 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 blocks on 10 of 20 shooting with 5 threes. And also, the fucking Peyton Sanford tax would not necessarily pay off for Oklahoma City, but he would still put together 23 points and 4 rebounds off the bench on 9 of 13 shooting with 5 threes, just but fucking cuz. All in all, again, never underestimate your opponent. And this is also why people say in ways that, hey, you can say how you can go out there and beat any NBA player, but then you see these performances from so many different guys. You see so many different people making the most of their moment when they have it. And you still believe, as an average individual, as a non-athlete, that you can absolutely walk them out of the park. Good luck with that kind of thinking. As John Poulikitis pulls up from deep against you, and maybe even gives you a little nudge while he's at it. But I digress. So, the stage is set in part, because for the playoff matches that are currently in motion right now, you have the Nuggets and the Timberwolves there facing off against each other in the West so far, and then the Lakers and the Rockets facing off against each other again. Now, I could do a preview, and I might elaborate on these a little bit in videos down the line, but I did kind of already touch on these in a way. So, again, the Nuggets would have walked all over the Rockets. But again, the Timberwolves, it has been a back and forth series specifically with them over the past few seasons. And so this is always going to be intriguing. You're getting this in the first round. Wow. And then the Lakers, of course, they're going to be at a disadvantage. You know this. If you are Houston, anything could still happen in a LeBron-KD matchup. And again, you're going to get that for yet another time. But, man, it is just, I really don't know how Los Angeles is going to survive that one. And then for the play-in games, you have the Clippers and Warriors and the Suns and the Trailblazers facing off against each other, respectively. It is wild to think that, again, we are in this position. The Suns-Trailblazers match, both of them were some solid games down to the very end. And it pits a young, up-and-coming Trailblazers team against the Suns roster, trying to summon some of that energy, and also an opportunity for Devin Booker to maybe make a bit of a legacy run here in a way. It's not something that many people are discussing, but he is far and above the primary target for this team. You don't sign him for a 2-year deal worth like $140+ million to get into a scenario for a play-in playoff push and be ousted early. No, this is an opportunity for Devin Booker to truly boost his kind of recognition here as a top player in the league. Truly. The Trailblazers, of course, they haven't necessarily been in this position, and it's all really going to be predicated in terms of who wins this game on who performs better in the clutch. Because there have been moments that the Blazers have lost games as a result of not being able to come through in the fourth quarter. The Suns as well, also at that particular time that I mentioned in the previous video, in that Rockets-Suns matchup, they entered that with the worst points per game total in the fourth quarter alone. The only way you will be able to win a game like this is by actually coming through and contributing when it counts. That is the only way. The Clippers and the Warriors as well, it's been a tight series for most of the year, and I believe the Clippers have the advantage. Now, of course, you have a different personnel for both teams in a way coming into this specific game, and you're already hearing some stuff. Apparently, Steve Kerr said that he was going to put all of Al Horford, Steph Curry, and Kristaps Porzingis on a minutes restriction. You be the judge of that in an elimination game. Like, literally, this is win or go home, 9 or 10, on both conferences. You know, you don't want to sell out in full, I suppose, but damn, like, you do realize you're still trying to fight for a playoff spot, right? But I digress. It's going to be interesting how, honestly, I really believe that one of the keys for them is to see what exactly Kobe Sanders or Benedict Mathurin can do on their end. I mean, there have been games where they have actually spurred some of the offense and some of the spark that the Clippers team has needed in order to eventually win. And for the Warriors, you're just going to have to figure out where exactly this defense is coming from to counter that. Because it's not like these teams are necessarily going to try to rip and run all up and down the floor. Although the Warriors' best way of being able to gain some control is to force transition opportunities. You have to win in the little details first before you can worry about trying to get the advantage on a greater scale. Like, don't overcomplicate the game. Literally, go possession by possession, knowing that every single one matters. And that's on both sides. But it should be a good game nonetheless. And then for the Eastern Conference, the Knicks and the Hawks are set as a matchup. And again, there have been references to the fact that Karl-Anthony Towns does do very well against the Hawks. But man, I am truly thinking that this is something that New York fans should truly be cautious about. Especially with what Dyson Daniels can do against a guy like Jalen Brunson. Like, yes, he does not have the same kind of weight, but my goodness, does he have the frame? Does he have the length to keep up with him and truly cause problems? Apparently, Jalen Brunson entering this time frame hasn't necessarily been on the hottest shooting streak himself. And the Hawks themselves know what it feels like. Hell, go back to, ironically enough, the Heat beat the Hawks. Go back to that series when Trae Young was there. When the Heat were able to make that run to the finals. Go back to that series and see just how anemic Trae Young was as an offensive player. Like, he damn near, again, for a player who was at that time still slated to be the focal point of that offense, he was an outright liability. The Hawks understood how that felt in that moment, and they want their reparations for that shit. So now, locked and reloaded with new talent on their roster, they want to cause that same kind of pain and influence on Jalen Brunson in this series. That is something that absolutely needs to be watched out for. It'll also be interesting to see what kind of wing assignment they place for factoring in against Jalen Johnson. If you're the Knicks, how exactly do you approach that? You have many. You could go either of Bridges, Hart, or Anunoby at any one time. Maybe they put them in a revolving door or a rotating cast. You have a number of methods to work with here. It's just about figuring out how you want to play around with this. My odds are that Anunoby would probably be the direct matchup on him. Jalen Johnson wants to play physical, wants to get out in transition, especially after rebounds and things like that. And Anunoby is the kind of defender who can slow him down in a way at the point of attack. And I think that's what you'd want if you're the Knicks. Slow things down. You want to grind this series out. If this has to be a showcase of you trying to outshoot them, in some cases you can. They were one of the more prolific volume shooting teams in the NBA this season. But you don't want to give a Hawks team like this that many opportunities either. This could get very dangerous. And then you also have the Cavs facing off against the Raptors, which is a good test of strength on strength. Obviously, the Cavs are going to be a great offense in this entire equation and have been for most of the year. But the Raptors as well, and as I highlighted in a different medium, also, their defense is just so fucking good. You know, having that team-centric play, especially on that end of the floor, is not a bad model to follow heading into playoff territory. So that should be an intriguing series. And then for the play-in games, you have the 76ers facing off against the Magic and the Hornets facing off against the Heat. I mean, at this point, you could argue that this is about even, in a way. Because for the Magic, it's all about their consistency on the floor. For the 76ers, it's about their consistency in terms of health. You may not have Joel Embiid in this game. And you know what? In some situations, while they've struggled, they've also been able to get some really good minutes from some of their role players when Joel Embiid is absent. And with you still having Tyrese Maxey and Paul George out there, in spite of all of this, you could still have an advantage here. So I wouldn't discount the 76ers being able to get this one. And you have the home court behind you. But the Magic, again, if they do want to come out, win this game, and get themselves in the playoffs, man, they have got to truly keep a consistent 48-minute stretch of play. They can't keep going through all these ebbs and flows, especially as an offense. And if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you're shoring up on your defense. If this is your strong suit as a culture. And then the Hornets and the Heat, you talk about pace and space, one of the top teams in the NBA in terms of pacing. In fact, the team leading in that metric throughout the year in Miami. And for the Hornets, well, you know they love to stretch the floor. Literally, it came down to a mellow ball and Konchinople finishing within just a single three of each other as they ranked 1 and 2 in three-pointers made throughout the year. And then Brandon Miller is not that far behind in terms of the overall rankings. They are going to want to splash. You know this. Can any one of these teams truly muster up some quality defense, especially in situational context? Can they? One of them is going to need to. Because this matchup, it's one of the only times that LaMelo Ball has really been in playing playoff scenarios. I think that this was actually one of the matchups he had to deal with in 2021, was facing off against this Heat team. Unless I'm tripping. But, man, that should still, even with all that being said, the teams that this entire thing consists of, they are all very intriguing. And people wanted to say that parity was not existent in the NBA for a long time. Well, we haven't. Every single team has their own case here. So this is going to be pretty fun. Again, with play-in action, I'm going to do my best to, account for it because it's on Prime. I don't have access to Amazon Prime, baby. So I don't think I'm going to be able to watch them live. I will do my best to keep up with the flow of the game, keep up with some of the highlights, and, try to string together some quality commentary on those specifically. It's kind of weird. It's like you could still put some of those games on channels that we all have access to, but, it is what it is. Who am I to suggest such an outlandish thing? But yeah. So that is it in terms of the games and the insight. But for a couple of developments, including one that came through earlier this morning. Man, Doc Rivers is departing from the Bucks head coaching position officially. In that instant, I'm saying that Bucks fans, rejoice. Rejoice. He is gone. The era of mediocre play and underwhelming results is over. It's done. You're off of that now. And you have an opportunity, especially heading into a long off season, to try to start a new path forward. And that is the best thing you can ask for if you are the Bucks in this situation. I mean, this was just to say that this was a wasted season might be a little bit of an understatement. I think, in a way, Milwaukee fans and different, people around the NBA landscape, they were expecting the results to be way better. They were expecting them to at least be playoff contenders. But honestly, in terms of, the expectations, I don't even know if anybody could say that they were going to contend for a title. The second that they had to wave and stretch Damian Lillard and stretch that contract out against 5 years with a total worth of $120 million, then spend that to go get Miles Turner. The second that happened specifically, on top of all the other chaos that has happened surrounding the Giannis debacle from the summertime last year, mind you. You already understood that this was not going to be a great year if you were looking at this on the outside. Because it's like all of that attention is being spent elsewhere, and through it all, we're just backlogged on practice reps. We're backlogged on different team meetings because we do not have the consistent access to our main guy. And even with him getting there, happened so late in the off season, and we're trying to make all these different pieces fit together. They're just not enough. Like, Giannis is a great player, and that alone is probably what had some people thinking that, hey, you could still get on a solid playoff run here. He is one man. And again, their inability to really build that effectively throughout this entire season around him told you everything that you needed to know. Like I've said, the second that he told you that he, in the event that he did not feel this team was doing everything they possibly could to build a winning roster or build a winning culture, he was out. He told you that beforehand. And then you niggas decided at the trade deadline to go get Cole Anthony, put him in a trade package for fucking Nigel Hayes-Davis and Nick Richards. Like I said then, that was just the tip of the iceberg. What the fuck made you think that either one of those players were going to really move the needle? Then you can't even agree overall on whether or not to shut down Giannis. And again, a lot of those things are front office things, but Doc Rivers as well also owns some of that. Again, in the seasons outside of, pretty much ever since he's been there, he, for all the credit that you want to give him, even if he is about to be a Hall of Famer, in which of his seasons did he showcase to you that he could truly raise the floor for this team through his own coaching ability, through his own ability to allocate proper minutes to the right guys in the system? Because he obviously had a say in some of these decisions as well, to make the right ones for the roster that you know you're possessing around an all-world talent in Giannis Antetokounmpo. And he missed the mark in each of those things. By far, didn't even come remotely close to hitting any of them. And the lack of clarity on his end as well to just feed into some of this back and forth also hurt his case for staying there. In reality, it wasn't all that new, because he'd mentioned earlier in the season, as I'd stated several times, that he was contemplating an end to his NBA career, an opportunity to step away, or retirement. These are things that he was saying earlier in the regular season, before it even started. So, to now see him depart, as they used initially with the language there, it isn't all that shocking, I suppose. But, man, it felt like it needed to happen. Because if you are in the position to even retain or lose Giannis, you have to get much better overall as a roster. And it just isn't going to happen if Doc Rivers is the leading man, because he's going to impose a ceiling on everything it is that you're doing or attempting to do. And that's what it felt like as well. Even when they were contending in, bits for playoff spots, they were just hitting the same wall each and every single time. Because it was them again falling short of expectation, or quite literally losing early in the playoffs, far earlier than they should have. And you consider where this team was at, because you fire Adrian Griffin to bring in Doc Rivers, when the team at that point had been very successful. So you bring in Doc Rivers mid-season at that point. And ever since then, it has been a downhill slope. Oh, they weren't playing as hard as a team when Adrian Griffin was in. Brother, if you don't get out of here with that, shit, like, come on, bro. It's just ridiculous, man. This is the most ridiculous thing I'm talking about, man. I mean, literally, like 30-13 with Adrian Griffin, but somehow, some way, you couldn't take that. That wasn't enough for you. And then you just go first round against the Pacers in back-to-back seasons before plateauing aggressively this year. You were only going backwards. And the last thing you want, or would even expect if you were trying to retain Giannis, is to have him be a part of a fucking rebuild. You're not going to make him go through that. You just aren't. So let's make that perfectly clear. You will not convince that man to be a part of a rebuild, because he wants to fucking win championships. You already know this. And if you do keep Giannis, it was clear that at some point there is a relationship dynamic that is just not as existent as you want it to be. You have to try to change it up if you can. And you have to get a new voice in there. The thing is, how and who? Because really, while there are a fair amount of guys out there who really deserve chances to coach in the NBA, in terms of the active market right now, there aren't any that truly jumped out to me at this moment that would take that Bucks job in a heartbeat. And while the Bucks are going to have to search for one, it might be contingent, frankly, on the decision that Giannis may make, because they're still mum about this. He's still saying he's not, really making a decision just yet on where exactly he may be moving, or if he's going to stay or go at all, right? He hasn't said anything about it specifically. Until that decision is made of, him potentially leaving or him potentially staying a Milwaukee Buck, it might be at that time where the Bucks finally decide to make a move for a specific head coach. That's what I'd say right now. You don't want to bring a coach there, especially if your promise is that, hey, I'm going to have Giannis on my team, sign me up, and then trade the nigga in the summertime. Just hold on, see exactly what you're going to do with him first. And then, again, if you keep him or not, it is after that decision that you then go out and hire a person. Now, I'm not saying that you just take this lackadaisically. No, you get your ass around the horn and start searching for fucking coaching prospects now. Right now. It's gotta begin. Because you have nothing but time on your hands. Your season's over. So there's no excuse for you. Look up all the coaches you need. And when the time is right, then select one to be the next Bucks head coach. Also, in terms of just a miscellaneous one, they mentioned that this was the first NBA season where 8 teams had 55 or more losses. Again, playing back into the notion of the tanking, anti-tanking measures. All I'm saying is, again, in a way, when the draft is as stacked as this year's looks to be, you can't necessarily be surprised at why, but again, the perception and the weight of having that many fucking teams involved in that kind of measure just for placement in the draft lottery is why it has gotten out of control. So, again, I know they're seeing that. They're probably getting even more metrics on this. They have to come up with better solutions, though, as I already alluded to. Because the anti-tanking shit, those fucking proposals are just whack as shit. They're going to vote for them in May. But they actually need to be smart with how they go about it. Because 8 teams, up from a traditional standard, that's a lot to try to get a handle on. And, you can find as many people you want. You can dock as many picks as you want through penalties and things like that. You can create all these different countermeasures. But some of these teams are probably still motivated due to some of their circumstances to still go all in for the tank, just for the sake of doing so, to get the rights to a premium talent that they believe can at least change their roster or be a core piece to add alongside another quality player they may have or may be looking to get through another measure. That's a lot of teams. That's a lot. I'm not, saying that isn't egregious. But it's just like, at a point, man, it isn't all too hard to see why it has reached this point. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.